And it is now 6:30 and you are good to go.
Perfect. Okay. So give me 1 second. I'm pulling up my agenda. This is a lot easier being in person with the paper packet. So thank you, Mara, for that. We appreciate it. All right. So first thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Well, first of all, this is the Historic Preservation Commission meeting of June 13th, 2023. So first thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes from our May meeting, May 9th. If everybody can review those, please.
The only thing I would say, there's just a minor thing after the discussion about Iola, the demolition of that house in Iola. It says that I did a motion to adjourn the meeting instead of approve the. Okay, that was the only thing I noticed. Otherwise, I move to approve the minutes with the correction.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay. So moving on, public hearings. I don't believe we have any public hearings tonight. Do we have any visitor comments?
No visitor comments.
Okay, so let's move to new business. We do have 2 demolition recommendations. The first one being 818 Holland Avenue, and that's a single family dwelling. And it looks like we do have information here on the screen. So staff recommends approval of the request to demolish the existing single family dwelling structure at the subject property without holding the request for additional review. Looks like the existing single family dwelling was built in 1930. The city has found no records pertaining to a historic property inventory sheet for the subject property. It has not been previously identified as an at-risk property that should be looked at for possible designation. And I guess you guys there in person have the packet showing images and information that was provided. So if you guys want to review that.
I took a look at this earlier and it looks like it's quite distressed property with the structural damage and water damage, termite, etc. So, you know, I'm perfectly comfortable with approving a demolition request on this. So am I.
Me too.
Okay, is that a motion?
I can make it one. I'll make a motion to approve the request for demolition for 818 Holland Avenue.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone present that's opposed? Okay. Moving on to the second demolition recommendation, it is the property at 126 East Jackson Avenue. It is also a single family dwelling built in 1926. The city has no records pertaining to historic property inventory sheet for the subject property. It has not been previously identified as at risk. And staff recommends the approval of the request to demolish the existing single family dwelling structure at the subject property without holding the request for additional review. And again, you guys have the information that was presented to us in your packets if you want to look over that.
I didn't have a problem with approving this one either.
Me neither. Do I make it a motion?
I move to approve the demolition request for 126 East Jackson Avenue.
Second.
Okay, all of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone present that opposes? Okay. So that takes care of our new business tonight. So that moves us on to our old business. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. It would, the owners of the property who are building the new house on that property that just left.
Okay,
They were just here to watch.
okay. So that moves us to our old business. From our last month's meeting, we did have a demolition recommendation for 150 Parsons Avenue, single family dwelling. This one, the HPC decided to hold until next month, given the age and some of the history that we did do research on for additional discussion. I do know at last month's meeting, there were a few people that were going to dig a little deeper on this property by either visiting the Webster Groves Library or connecting with the Historical Society, which I believe they did respond to us. So we did get comments back about this property and the owner that or one of the residents of this property that we had identified. And I know that Mara had compiled the information that we had from our previous meeting into this PowerPoint, just to kind of summarize what we had found. And if there's anybody who did any additional research on this, if you want to share any of that or have any comments.
Did look into this a little bit. And use more my professional mode to look at this from a standpoint of, its setting and integrity and the location. Started looking through the permit a little bit, wasn't getting anywhere. So I thought, I wanted to go over and see the area. Do maybe what I would do if I was hired to look at this. And the area has basically a hodgepodge of buildings. There's some that are old, there's one built in the 60s, one in the 70s, one in 92, one, so there's like all these different houses. In that way, it doesn't have a setting of being with a bunch of old homes. But there's a few there, so it kind of still goes and it just falls. After looking at it, everything, I felt like it falls into the same place. We have to find something to save the place, like all of the little group of houses there. It'd be great if kept them all, because it's obvious what's going to happen. There's 3 new houses right in a row. And so that's what's going to happen. All of them are going to be gone, I would guess. But except for maybe 2 that are in really pretty good condition.
Well, and I think we were presented with a list of properties in Webster Groves that were built in the 1800s.
Right.
And I apologize at this moment, I don't have that pulled up, so I don't know the number. I don't know if anybody has that information in front of them right now.
Yeah, that's the map I used to go over there and survey the area and look at it. And then I just went in and looked at some, just what I could find online, what the dates of the other houses nearby were, just to get a feel for it. And while there are a few, I guess that's what I mean. So there's a few, but that's where then it started making me think really of the whole notion of Webster Groves could really use a preservation plan. What we need to have that. When I've done that work, we usually start out by saying the best way to manage your historic resources is to choose some areas that are your historic resources and, let the rest be a little bit. And this already is like that, it's already that way. The house in particular, the woman who lived there for a short time, really, it seems, is that, I don't know if that's enough. I feel it's like, you could have a lot of people lived in a house for a short time. I don't know if that's okay, but anyway. I didn't feel like I got anywhere in being able to say what I wanted to say. You know, yes, it's a good example of this time period. It has a lovely setting with a couple other older homes from that time period and all that kind of thing. I don't know. It just is like the porch isn't original. That's added. That's not what it, so historically speaking, that goes against the integrity of the building, right? No different than the setting goes against the integrity of the building. So
Right.
it's kind of, it makes it a little bit tricky. I'd like to save this house personally, but do we have a legitimate argument to save it? I'm not sure.
I think other than its age. And it's kind of cute, in its kind of funky way.
Exactly.
But it looks to me like it's really suffered from years of neglect. And especially the foundation problems kind of are alarming to me. I mean. That I just don't know if it's makes sense to try and preserve it.
Yeah. It's. Someone could have purchased it to move into it, absolutely, and. It would be nice if we had some way to encourage that instead of basically encouraging developers, but that's not what the rules in the city are. So, you know, that's a zoning thing. That's not anything we could do. So,
And I assume the heirs, the very people that probably lived in this house are the ones that have sold it to a developer. But.
because they did, you know. but
Yeah,
Some people care and some people just, you know, for all we know, they don't even live around here, right? They're
Right,
just kind of like,
and
I don't
yeah.
know, some person who takes care of the estate sells the property. And they'll pass
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, we don't know the situation of the current owners and how this came to be. I feel like all we can do as a commission is look into the history of a property and see if it deems approval or approval for demolition. And again, I know we did receive some information from the Historical Preservation Commission, which they basically said it was probably a tenant situation with the information that I had found from newspaper articles, given the person that lived in the house in like the 20s and 30s.
So Anne, I just wanted to let you know, this is technically not a public hearing, which means that it's not for the public to be able to speak. We do have someone who is here, and if you were here, you probably would have seen him raise his hand. You as the chairperson are allowed to open it up if you want to see if anyone wants to share anything, but you're not required to.
Yeah, I do see the gentleman sitting there, and I appreciate you coming into our meeting. And if you do have something to comment on this, we would love to hear that.
Thank you. I'll come around to the end.
Oh,
Okay,
good, thanks.
My name is Kent McPeak. I've been a structural engineer in this area for about 40 years. And I've done,
Hi.
and I've done a lot of renovations, and that's kind of my specialty. But this particular house has been neglected for some time. It's in really poor condition inside. No one's taken care of it for years and years, and there's a lot of like sagging beams and walls out of plumb and think, you know, windows about to fall out. There's a lot of siding problems. There's a lot of the underlayment beyond the siding is all like eaten up with termites and things like that. So there's a lot of problems with the house that someone would have to deal with if they were going to renovate the house. And it has a limestone foundation that leaks, you know, and unfortunately, and not a lot has been done to mitigate that by either taking care of the roof or the gutters or the downspouts. I mean, there's just a lot of water that comes in to this basement, and it just makes the basement kind of icky. And you can see from the pictures that I took from my report that the ridge of the roof is sagging quite a bit because the rafters have started to come loose and the roof is splaying outward towards the front and the rear, kind of pushing it outward as the ridge drops down, and nothing's been done to take care of that, like for decades. So there'd be a lot of problems for someone renovating this house. And I guess you go back to like, how pretty is the house? Not very. You know, it's kind of plain Jane, and inside there's nothing really going on. There's not any interesting, casework or anything like that. The windows are framed in a very simplistic manner. There's not, hardwood floors are not, nothing's been done to them in forever. The basement's I would say a sort of primitive Webster Grove style, with some poles sitting on chunks of concrete and or cinder blocks kind of thing. And, so it's not very stout downstairs. So there'd be a lot of work to make this house whole again. Anyway, I appreciate you letting me speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I just, took a look through, Mr. McPeak's report and, the photographs. And, unfortunately, hate to lose a house like this. However, it just looks to me on a cursory review, like it's beyond any, sort of financial feasibility to bring this back into any sort of usable or state, without some sort of like, if it could be designated for tax credits, that would be great, but just based on our preliminary review, it doesn't look like there would be any grounds there for that. So unfortunately, I kind of hate to let it go. I think it would be pretty difficult to make a case based on, Jubal Early's niece being in resident as a tenant for a short time, and also just given the condition that it's currently in, unfortunately, it just seems like it's just really not feasible to save this and bring it back.
I agree with that conclusion.
So, we do have more time, but I don't know that anybody's. You said it's not a public hearing, but can we make it so that we vote on it?
Oh, yeah, you can vote on it. It's just not it's not a certificate of appropriateness where we had to hold a public hearing.
Oh, I see.
So it's not an official public hearing that has
Oh, I see. what you're saying.
time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just an item on the agenda,
Yeah.
just like anything else. So normally people can't just come in and talk about your items on the agenda without being recognized by the chair.
All right.
I would like to say first, before anything. Obviously, yes, it pains us to see a property, especially this old, go away because it is. And yes, the porch is not original, but it is a historic piece of Webster Groves. Progress does have to happen. I really do hope that the current owner takes into consideration that this property has been around since what, 1898, 99, might not have wood floors or beautiful wood moldings or whatnot, but whatever can be salvaged from this property, I do hope that there's every effort given to try to do so, and that it doesn't just end up in a demolition pile and go to waste. So I would just like to say that. So I guess, if there aren't any other questions or comments, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the demolition request for 150 Parsons Avenue.
I'll second.
All of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay. And thank you to our visitor for your time and for attending our meeting.
You.
So next in our old business, we do have our 2023 projects for the HPC that we did start discussing last meeting. We did have several ideas. Obviously, we don't have all current members present tonight, but I think we can still kind of try to talk about some of these and maybe narrow some of them down to get kind of a better idea of what we would like to do as a commission as a whole. And Angela just brought this up earlier, the overall preservation plan for the city is one. We do have historic survey for the city as a whole. The Joy Built homes, designating them for a walk. And I don't know if that's even designating them. I'm still a little, because I'm thinking of neighborhoods, but if we are doing Joy Built homes, I guess we would plan to do research on them for a walk. And then other nominations for districts or structures, educational documents, grants. So I don't know if anybody has any further ideas or thoughts onto what we can do in 2023 as an HPC project.
You also briefly touched on adding preservation to the comprehensive plan, and I understand that, you know, funding and everything is still under discussion.
It is, it's still in the budget, and the budget will, I mean, I haven't heard any rumblings of taking it out, but we officially passed the budget next week from today. So that would be for the year starting July 1. And I do like the idea of making that, I mean, we haven't, of course, done an RFP or anything, but making that comprehensive plan as comprehensive as it can be. Because there's talk about, you know, environmentally having like that as a consideration as well. In fact, there's a talk on the 22nd about bringing, Mark, can you think of I'm trying to think of the term, it's like, it's from the, like taking natural resources into mind when you're doing your comprehensive plan. There's an expert coming from the Department of Natural Resources
Yeah.
to talk about that. And I can't remember, there's a phrase and I can't remember what the phrase is, but including historic things into that planning process would be great.
Yes.
We haven't like defined the scope or anything like that yet, but I like that idea.
So what kind of input would be needed from us?
I don't know yet.
I think that, I mean, that sounds like something that's immediate and that we could just jump on
yeah.
and that
I
would
agree.
really be beneficial citywide.
I'm sure that once we get it passed, then we'll have to we'll have like hopefully a working group or something to figure out how to actually implement stuff, and we'll be sure to keep the commission in the loop on those things.
So
Oh, go ahead, Angela.
if you do want some input from us, I mean, I would be in planning or in deciding what you want from someone. I've worked a lot with cultural resources, putting that together as plans and those kinds of things. If you want some help, I would be more than happy. I know Carol's done a lot of that kind of work too.
Great.
I'm not going to speak for her, but
That's okay.
because I know that sometimes people are like, oh, I don't know, what should we do? It seems good, but what do we do?
Yeah,
I just have someone come in and tell you, hey, here's what we're gonna do for you, you know, it's not always, it's hard to know.
yeah,
Right.
no, I appreciate that. We haven't done one in decades, and so I'm not sure exactly like what our process will be, but I'm sure it'll be lots of chances for input, and I'll keep in mind to make sure that everybody's kept in the loop
And
for your services.
one other thing that I have to mention, because I have to as myself, is that it's always good to integrate the notion of sustainability and historic preservation as the
Yes.
same thing. It is our environment we are sustaining, not just one or the other, or they're not at odds. It is actually all
Together.
it is one thing. And so you don't want it to be at odds with each other.
Yeah.
To make it an incorporated, true master plan. You know, you want to, because keeping our I think this of Webster Groves. Webster Groves' hugest commodity, or whatever you would say, is old growth wood. It's in the houses everywhere, the siding, the windows, the doors, the everywhere. And of course, in all the trees all over Webster Groves. It's like, you know, so it's just everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's something that should be, I don't know, make something of it, because it's important to keep it and not just toss it out every other minute like we usually seem to here. But, you know, do a pretty good job, really, so we'll keep with it.
And well, you know, the notion of embodied energy, the energy that's been the natural energy that's incorporated into all this timber and the old growth, and you don't want to spend energy to tear down what's already an investment in
Yeah.
energy.
We've already, right,
And also too, I mean, even the state recognizes kind of in their organizational structure, their Historic Preservation Commission is under the umbrella of the Department of Natural Resources. So the State Historic Preservation Office is part of the Natural Resources Department. So, you know, it just kind of shows how the two go together naturally. So I think that, you know, anything that we could do to add preservation to the comprehensive plan, and just kind of keep it in the forefront, because our historic nature is, I mean, to me, for me personally, I mean, I'm biased, but that's like the number one asset we have in keeping our community beautiful.
Appreciate that, and I'll keep it in mind, and Mara will be like super involved with the whole process. So that's
sure she will.
great.
More than. Yeah.
Got good liaisons to get those all.
So this is one that I feel like I don't have the most knowledge on the overall preservation plan for the city. And I think kind of what you guys were talking about just now ties into that. So I don't know if that is something that we do want to focus on. I don't know, Angela, Carol, if you guys have thoughts on that.
Well, one thing about it is it's gonna take a minute. So we could have something else, you know, we don't maybe want something huge to do, but we could have something else to do before the city's even ready for anything to happen. Otherwise, we're gonna keep coming to the meeting and thinking, well, what are we gonna do next?
Yeah, it'll be
So,
so. Historic survey, Mara, like, how does that fit into the preservation plan? Like, would that be helpful to have done before or done as part of, or?
It just depends on how engrossed we're going to be, like. I mean, the budget that we have for the comprehensive plan and the idea of how much is gonna go into it. It can include all of these items, but it's not gonna get into the depth of like a historic survey or, you know, the preservation plan, depending on how it gets integrated. It's 150,000, but that's including all the public meetings and
Yeah,
all the other things that they're gonna do.
if we had the historic survey going into it, would it make the preservation plan like?
It would probably have some, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And does that
Yeah,
tie into
like-
the last thing? Like, can we get a grant to help with the historic survey too? Like, do those?
Well,
go those together?
Grants take a while now.
They
Yeah,
do.
and they're actually from the ones that we looked at the state. I went to the online, this is how you do this. It's extremely labor intensive just to get the grant. Then once you get it, you have to produce the work. And it's very labor intensive to do the reporting that's required to keep the grant. And yeah, I mean, I could, if you're interested, I can give you the bullet points of what's required, but the gentleman doing the presentation said, yeah, this is very under applied for, and I was thinking. Right.
Right.
And it's a deal where you have to define your scope of work going in. You have to have a demonstrated community buy-in, and then you have to have your budget and your time frame. And there's no stopping in the middle of the process and going, oh, wait, we need to reduce our scope of work because we're running out of budget. That is not allowed. So when I was looking at all of that, I was like, Wow. So, you know, that there was the possibility mentioned when, some other grant funding sources that, like the Route 66 and that kind of thing. I don't know how, hopefully they would be less onerous, than the one from the state. But, yeah, so a grant is a great idea, but it takes a while, and then also too, they were talking about how long it takes you to get your money after you complete everything, and it can be, sounded like as much as a year or 2 years to be reimbursed for all of these expenditures. So it was just, I was like shocked, actually.
Yeah, that's pretty normal. That all sounds within the realm of that, and the city's accounting, I'm not concerned about the reimbursement timeframe because.
We had problems with the grant that we received because they had gotten the grant before I started here. And they weren't doing proper paperwork and we almost had to pay the state back.
Yeah, you have to do what you said you're gonna do, and you can't reduce your scope just because, things
That's
are-
what you
yeah,
do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, on the like scientific research side of things, but
I mean, a grant's a grant, isn't
I mean.
it? Not really, but.
Yeah, there is a ton of paperwork, the scope is super important and all of that, so I get that. I think a grant could be super helpful if there is something that you really want to do and you need funding to do it, and that's the way to get it. And it's not super urgent, you know what I mean, like you can put in your grant, you're committed to it. And the only way that you're gonna be able to do it is if you get the funding. I think that's a good reason to do that. If you think that either you can do the historic survey without a grant, with the expertise on the commission, like, cool. I mean, I couldn't do that, but I don't know what it takes to do that. Or enough on a smaller scale, or if you decide like, now's not the right time to do a historic survey, let's concentrate on something else. That's fine.
Do we have a budget for our endeavors?
So there's a form that can be filled out to request money, but I will tell you, there's
Not
a
any
lot
money.
of commissions who all want funding,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of stuff that people want to do, and the budget is tight.
I can't
So-
remember what it is this year per commission. I should know that,
There's not a specific per commission.
because last year it was like 1,000 per commission.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
this
so I
year
don't
it's
have it in my
not
brain.
specific per commission. I thought they
Pulled it.
pooled it, and then you have to make a request, and I know a couple of the commissions who have been a little bit more aggressive have already been putting paperwork in for things.
But that should not stop you, like if you.
No, it's just
Yeah.
that there's a lot to figure out for a survey of what you would need. In past years, we've hired someone to do the research and technical writing for one of the brochures for one of the walking tours. We've had a photographer hired to take pictures of houses. So there's been those kinds of things in the past, but I think right now, if we were thinking about asking for something in this year's budget, which is about to start July 1, we probably should have been starting like in January to think through what you were going to ask for and have everything ready. But again, you could spend this time working through it and figuring it out, but that's not going to get the inventory done before.
But we are still allowed to form subcommittees, correct?
Oh, yeah, you can definitely form subcommittees. You
So
can also
like,
get-
if it's a question of like time and labor and research, if we can kind of do more of like a grassroots thing as a subcommittee.
You can get volunteers. They do not have to be, you do not, when you're doing projects, it does not have to be the members of this commission. It can be a combination. So when they did their lecture series, there was a group of 3 or 4 people who were not on the commission. It was a subcommittee to do a lecture series that was funded by a grant that, they held at Webster University, and they paid for, renting the space and getting some food for the reception that started and getting posters out and doing an ad in the, like they had it all kind of pulled together, but it was a subcommittee and there were volunteers. I just wasn't the staff liaison at the time. One of my staff was.
But that involved a grant.
That one did involve a grant. So, I mean, if you wanted us to figure out, I mean, there are ways we can ask the state for examples of historic surveys or examples of a scope of work for a survey. I mean, we can do that. That could help. Like if you want to narrow it down to, you want to work on the survey and maybe work on a grant, we could start doing research on both of those. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I would like to see something like that. I really have no experience at all in something like this. I'm very curious as to what it involves.
Yeah, Sue, I'm the same. I'm also wondering though, so this evening, we don't have all of our current members present. We do still have 3 vacancies, is that correct?
That is correct.
So I'm not trying to push off any decision on a 2023 project, but just from what I'm hearing, if we're wanting any kind of budget from the city, we might be a little late for that. Which
It's
is
not that you're
okay,
necessarily late, it's just that you're gonna need to pull some things together.
Right,
And I think.
right, but I'm just wondering if we don't have a full commission at the moment. And trying to get volunteers, I just feel like maybe that's where we need to kind of pool our energies, is trying to find some more people to join the commission. Get some interest into subcommittees, because I feel like that is where it's going to help us in any kind of project that we want to do with budgetary restrictions. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
Yeah, we would need some people. If we did the historic survey, have you done much of that? No, yeah.
It sounds very labor intensive for, yeah.
So, yeah. I was just talking about this today. I surveyed 250 military homes. And it got so, but these were historic military homes, so we had to go inside each house. It got so old. It was, I mean, it just got,
House number 100.
yeah, it just really got old. So this fortunately would be more of I think we would have to walk the entire Webster Groves, right? That's what we would have to do.
And maybe you
walk
have
around.
volunteers that are on the
And-
commission that help you with the
Yeah,
walking part, and
yes.
then the commission helps like get all that information to get, like, kind of lead that and
So I think we
collate
need
it.
we need some people. We only have so many members
Yeah.
right now to do that kind of work. To go.
So
around
maybe
and make sure
instead of, I
what it
guess,
is.
can I just say personally for me, looking at 2023 projects, ideas, that's very overwhelming to me because we have a lot. And they're great. They are all important and fascinating, and probably could find a bunch of information that we don't even know about our community. But I think to get to that point, we need to break that down. And if we need to start getting volunteers, finding other people that can be on the commission, kind of starting at that point and getting kind of our ducks in a row to start a project, maybe that might make it more feasible.
Yeah, like, I kind of think that's not the worst idea, that our project be to find a few people somehow, maybe,
Yeah.
because I don't do
Brings
anything
up the
to
the
encourage.
board.
And then come back to the list and figure it out.
Yeah.
We had also, last meeting talked about, conservation districts, and I think Mara, you had mentioned that you were going to look into, whether or not the current planning and zoning, would support, designation of conservation districts, or what would have to be done in order to accommodate that. Were you able to? And all your free time?
Yeah, I wasn't able to find much. There's nothing in our specific one, but then I was going to look at some other communities and see what they had or didn't have in theirs. And that I have not had time to do yet.
Because I think that that might be a possible interim project that we might be able to do with the resources we have, the human resources, while we're, following up on Ann's suggestion of, getting some more folks involved. So maybe that's something in the short term, we can be looking at the conservation district, get the information about what other cities have going on, start recruiting people. And then when we get more information about what's needed for adding preservation to the comprehensive plan, we can, pick that up when the time is right.
That sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
So I have a question as far as city commissions go. If we are looking for volunteers, obviously each of us can kind of do that in our own way via talking to neighbors or business owners around town or social media. But like, is there any way that the city would support that effort as far as like the city's social media accounts or the website or anything like that? Do we have?
So they do that on a regular basis.
Okay.
For all.
But
our
like specifically,
commissions.
if we as a commission say, okay, we want to find some volunteers for.
Oh, volunteers separate from, so yes, you can definitely do, if they. We do have the ability that if a commission has something that they need to get out, you can send it and get it. Run through the proper channels to get things posted, correct?
Jenny's done a lot of that for Green Space Advisory Commission, so
For sustainability.
sustainability, so yeah, she can definitely help. with
I thought
that.
you were meaning just getting 3 people on the commission and I was
No,
like.
I know you guys are, you're on that. I understand that. But like, if we as a commission decide that we want to do a project where we need volunteers or we need a subcommittee, as individual members, we will try to find whoever we can, but I didn't know how far the city could go to help us in that effort.
Yeah, we can put that out, if, I'm sure Jenny could help with that. I was just thinking, we just set up the greenkeepers on the city's website, so it's like a volunteer corps to help with, gardening projects and things like that. That could always in the future be expanded or added on, or have a sister corps that helps with other projects. That's where my brain was going. So right now it's mostly, garden club and people that want to help with parks and that sort of thing. But if we think that long-term we're gonna have like a need for a volunteer corps, there's a way to kind of do signups on for that through the city's website as well.
That's good.
And if anyone's interested in help in signing up for that, just go to the website and look up greenkeepers.
Greenkeepers.
Mhm.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
So I know we kind of went down our list that we discussed at last month's meeting, and we did talk about the overall preservation plan and historic survey. I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts. I'm still interested personally in grants. I know they take a lot of work, but I haven't done on my own due diligence research on, kind of how to get that started. So to me personally, that's something I'm still interested in, because obviously they are out there and they're hard to get for a reason. But I think that and maybe not this year, but would be something I'd be interested in researching for future projects. I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts on any of the items we have under the projects, or if there are any additional ones you're thinking of. And again, I think it does come down to members, and obviously we're short Doug and Michael tonight. So I think if we're all in agreement that we need to possibly try to find more members and additional help with future projects, that could be something that we stem from.
I think that sounds reasonable, and I just was looking back at some notes from when our guests from the state were with us, and I jotted down a few of the possible grants that we might be able to use. And perhaps it might be worth some time here at some point to just do a little background research to see if we can find any of those that would be less onerous than the CLG grants from the state.
I think that's a great strategy, kind of like you did with Lestron and Joyville. You picked Lestron and you've got it down, and now if you want to do a bigger project, you have that experience, you could look for a smaller, less onerous grant opportunity. And then, kind of build up from there.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a little cart before the horse, but just whatever gets you there, right? If we were to locate a grant that's less onerous, that looks like it might be suitable, maybe we could see what they fund and kind of back into a project that way.
Yeah.
If there's something that they will fund that is a grant that looks like it's manageable for us, maybe we can say, okay, well, here's what they'll fund and here's what we're interested in. Let's see where our matches are. And it's a little bit different approach, but what the heck.
No, and you're
Yeah.
right, Carol, and like what's sustainable too, because like you said, there's some grants that you apply for, and if you get them, you still have to do work after the fact to maintain that. So maybe one that's on a smaller scale that doesn't take as much effort prior to and after, that we can kind of test the waters with. I think that would be a good idea. So I think at this point, maybe a little bit of homework for all of us. And Sue, I know that you have been really good about trying to recruit people on Facebook to be commission members. I haven't been as active recently about that. So maybe if we can all as members try to find some additional commission members, people that are interested in this, and kind of put the word out that we are looking for volunteers for possible subcommittees or projects. I think that would be a really good start, just to kind of gauge the interest and give us an idea of, okay, is anybody interested? Can we do this? Or, hey, we have a big group of people, let's figure this out now and get them going.
I've put something out in the past to some of the volunteers at the Historical Society and didn't receive any response, but that might also be a resource for a volunteer pool too, for a project.
Yeah, that's what I think when you say that, it's a little better. Sometimes somebody might think like, well, I'm not completely obligated to this commission for the city. Just volunteer to do a little project makes it sound better, even though not be that little, but yeah.
It seems like less of a commitment, and there's not really necessarily a scheduled and,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, does anybody have anything else to contribute to the projects or the old business of tonight's meeting?
I can do a quick council update if you want, and Mari, if I have a staff update, so I don't know.
I always welcome during the council updates. So
I'm
that's
trying to think, I think probably the most timely thing right now is the Charter Review Advisory Board survey just closed. And I think they were gonna go over those survey results at last night's meeting, but I haven't watched it yet. So it's either last night's meeting or the next meeting. They'll go over those survey results. So I don't know I should have sent something out ahead of time to make sure that everybody filled it out, but I don't know if you saw it, but it had questions about like, do we do wards versus at large, council and mayor compensation? And the threshold for like referendum or recall type of ballot issue, and I'm trying to remember, those were kind of like the three main areas, so I'm really interested to hear what people had to say about that, and I think that'll probably be of interest to the commission too, just because it's kind of fascinating how people think, but they did a really great job on linking out to resources, so people could go out and see like, what do other municipalities do, or what have we done historically, and so I thought it was, even just doing the survey was like, oh, this is really interesting. This is really
I
interesting.
did do the survey.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought that there were some other resources to use that. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
I really liked that actually, because sometimes you do feel like, I don't
Oh,
know.
yeah,
Yeah, so what do I do base this decision on?
yeah, yeah, and I
Do I have
think
to
it
guess
really,
here or?
it was
can I move on?
really well thought out, and a lot of those resources, maybe all of them, are linked on their page on the city's website, so if you're curious about what they're working on, there's lots of stuff going on out there. Pool update, I don't know, we've been talking about options, it's back with the director of parks to kind of come up with a recommendation. But let's talk on how big it should be, and should there be an indoor option and things like that. And I think the direction from the, and this is something that would go out to bond to see what residents want to cover. I think the way council was kind of leaning was not going smaller than what we already have. Because that was what some of the options are. It's just
I mean,
expensive.
make the school pool smaller?
There were like options that would
What
have
would
made the
Webster Waves do?
pool smaller. And the council was like, we can't make it smaller. A lot of people really like the idea of an indoor option, which the building costs could be covered by the cost of the bonds, but Scott Davis did research on other indoor options and other indoor pools in the area, in the state, and in the zoo even, and none of them cover their cost. So we have to think about not only the build out costs, but also that we would have probably $200,000 added to our annual budget every year that would need to be covered, which makes, as speaking not for council, but as a council member, it makes me really nervous on adding that. But I totally get what the attraction is to an indoor option too.
Is there any way to, I've always wondered, because my daughter was on the dive team and the swim team at the high school, and they have to drive to Kirkwood to practice. The boys, there's no pool, right? And so their coach always said, why did the high school not take over the Y and use the pool? And, so why could the school get incorporated in
They
that?
certainly could, and I would welcome that.
Because Webster Waves is huge. They win almost every year. The
I
whole-
know
the
that-
rec
I know
center
that many
thing.
teams, including Webster High, are very interested in renting lane time. I would love for them to also be at the table in helping with capital, but they've got their own capital, like I get why they're not, they've got a bit huge
Their own
capital
problems.
projects going too. I would love to see neighboring municipalities, school districts, like partner in the build out and the maintenance with the city, but we do not have that at this time. But there definitely is interest in renting lane time and things like that. So that's kind of where it is. It's back with Scott Davis to kind of write up the official recommendation. Council will make decisions. We'll get it on the ballot for people to vote on and kind of go from there. So that's the next few steps on that. And last budget meeting is on Tuesday. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. that's
Did
come
the
up.
solar panel thing?
That passed.
Okay.
Yep, so that's good. There's so much information in the budget meetings and the budget book. I know that I find it fascinating. So like, if you're interested in like how the city ticks and like what's involved, the budget book that they put together, like the narrative, that's your thing, which it is for me. It's very well done and it's really interesting. So there's a lot of information out there too. Or you can watch the YouTube recordings, but that's kind of what's going on with council.
I appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you, Emily, for letting us know all that. Does anybody have anything else to comment or any questions?
So your next meeting is July 11th, which typically would mean the packets would go out the week before, which would be July 4th, which they're not gonna do, obviously. And July 5th, that will be my first day back from being out of the country. So we'll see. Some people might, if they turn things in while I'm gone, it's just gonna have to go onto another agenda.
Well, that should be fine, right?
Yeah, we get people who get annoyed.
But is there like a regulatory clock, like a ordinance that you have to get it on in a certain?
There is a certain element, if they get it in by a certain time, that it is complete. Yes, there is timing that they have
But we'll
to
still
get it
be
on.
okay with it now.
If they're just doing demolition of a non-historic district, then our clock should be okay. If they're requesting something in a historic district, like a garage or something like that, then we'll have some issues. I've been warning everyone who comes in, like, I've been giving everybody timelines, like Board of Adjustment is due Thursday of this week. And I told them if it was not complete, it's not going on, because I just don't have the time to get the ads, the signs, the packets and everything together, because that packet all supposed to go out the day that I come back.
And if there's nothing on the meeting, we'll cancel. Is that what we think?
I would say, I mean, if there's nothing on the meeting, I mean, technically the projects is on the meeting,
Sure.
so. I can always have another staff member, like we can also. We didn't used to have packets go out ahead of time. I could have a real basic agenda that just simply says, we're doing 2023 projects and we can meet. So it's not a huge deal, but it's just getting some of that pulled together. We'll see.
Hear all about your trip.
I know, I'm excited about your trip. Probably not as-
Well deserved. And I know we talk about like getting more members and getting volunteers, and I just want to take a moment to thank all of you for attending the monthly meetings and making that commitment, because as a reminder, you guys are volunteers. So, you know, we're thankful for your time. So if there's no other questions or comments, do we have a motion to adjourn, with the potential July meeting being the 11th, but that will also kind of be a wait and see.
I move we adjourn.
I'm gonna give this back to you, so you can have all your clicks.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Anne.
You.
Diane.
Have a
Bye.
good night.